November 9th, 1944. Hurtgen Forest, Germany. 7:48 in the morning. Private Danny Kowalski was 20 yards from the foxhole when he died. He was carrying a canvas bag with 3 cans of sea rations and a replacement radio battery. The shot came from somewhere to the northeast. He did not fall immediately. He took 2 more steps, the way men sometimes do when the brain has not yet received the message. And then he went down face first into the pine needles and did not move again. Nobody ran to him. Nobody could. That was the thing about this sniper. He did not just kill men. He made their bodies into traps. 3 times in the previous 8 days, soldiers who rushed toward a fallen man had been shot as well. So the company had learned the brutal way that soldiers in the Hurtgen learned everything: to stay down and stay still. Danny Kowalski lay 20 yards from the nearest American and nobody could reach him. And for an hour, nobody knew if he was dead or just wounded and bleeding out in the pine needles. And that hour was its own kind of hell. The Hurtgen Forest does something to men that open field combat does not do. In open country, you can see the threat. You can move toward it or away from it. You have information. In the Hurtgen, the trees are 60 feet tall and packed so close that visibility is 40 yards at best. In November, with the canopy blocking what little light there is and the ground fog sitting heavy between the trunks, it drops to 20. A man crouching in a depression 40 yards away is invisible. A man lying prone in the needle layer is invisible. The Germans had spent 2 years building their defense around exactly that. More than 60,000 mines in the ground, barbed wire at ankle height between trees, every trail crossing pre-registered with artillery. When an American unit stopped moving, shells arrived within 90 seconds. But the mines and the wire and the artillery were problems a man could at least name. A sniper with no fixed position, no predictable pattern, and 9 confirmed kills in 8 days was a different problem. He was not in the forest. He was inside the heads of every soldier in that company. And he was doing more damage there than any mine. Men stopped moving, not because they were ordered to, but because their bodies refused. A veteran sergeant in Able Company wrote in a field report that his men had begun to treat every gap between trees as a potential grave. A routine task, like crossing 20 yards of open ground, something that should take 30 seconds, was now a negotiation a man had to have with himself. Sometimes it took 10 minutes. Sometimes it ended with him not going at all. The company had been cut off from reliable resupply for 4 days. Ammunition was short, morphine nearly gone. Captain Harold Weiss had tried everything. On November 6th, he called artillery onto the suspected northeast sector. The shells hit the trees and sent splinters in every direction.
The rendezvous is here.
The next morning, the sniper shot a medic 300 yards from the impact zone.
Move out.
Weiss stood in his command post, which was a hole in the ground covered with 2 logs and a layer of pine branches, and looked at his map and understood that he was out of ideas. He had 9 crosses on that map, 9 men in 8 days, each shot clean, each from the northeast, each from a position nobody had found. He sent for Private First Class Raymond Cole. Cole was 22 years old and from Deer Lodge, Montana. Before the Army, he had spent 6 years as an assistant hunting guide in the mountains west of the Continental Divide, country so remote that a client who broke an ankle 3 miles from the trailhead had exactly 2 options. Cole had grown up reading ground the way other men read text, not as a skill he had been taught, but as a language he had absorbed over years in terrain that punished inattention. He had come through Normandy with the 4th Infantry Division, through the hedgerows of France, and had been in the Hurtgen since late October. He was not a sniper, not a scout in any official capacity. He was an infantryman who happened to know things about forests that nobody in his chain of command had thought to ask about. Weiss spread the map in front of him. 9 crosses, 8 days, northeast sector. Then he told Cole that a counter-sniper team of 2 men had gone in 4 days ago and came back empty, that a second team had gone in 2 days ago and had not come back at all. Cole looked at the map and said nothing for a moment. 2 men who had not come back meant 2 more crosses that Weiss had not yet drawn on the map. He knew that. He did not say it. He asked which direction each man had been facing when he was hit. Weiss did not know. He had the positions. He did not have the orientations. Cole said he needed to talk to whoever had been present at each of the 9 shootings, and he needed to talk to the medics. Weiss told him to do it. What Cole was doing was something he had learned not from the army, but from an elk hunter named Frank Aldrich, who had been his first employer at 16. When you find a carcass in the field and want to know where the shot came from, you do not look at the landscape first. You look at the animal, the entry and exit of the wound, the way it fell. The position of the body tell you the angle of the hit, and the angle tells you the direction of the shooter more precisely than any guess about cover or sight lines. You read the body before you read the terrain. By the afternoon of November 10th, Cole had spoken to 11 men and 2 medics. He had a pattern. 8 of the 9 kills showed wound trajectories consistent with a shot from the northeast at a downward angle. Elevated shooter. The 9th was different enough that Cole set it aside. Of the 8, 7 had occurred between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. He sat with that number for a long time. 7 kills inside a 4-hour window. In November in Germany, the sun tracks low across the southern sky. A man on an elevated northeast slope shooting south would have the sun at his back during those exact hours. No glare on his scope. Before 10 and after 2, the angle shifts and the light starts working against him. Cole had spent years in mountain country watching how light moves through a forest and how animals use it. Elk bed down facing into the sun in the morning and shift position in the afternoon for exactly the same reason. This was not instinct. This was the same calculation, made by a man who understood it as well as any animal did. That was the moment Cole understood what he was dealing with. Not a frightened soldier who had been handed a rifle and told to slow the Americans down. Someone who had been doing this for a long time. Someone who thought about light and position and patience the same way Cole did. He told Weiss he needed to go into the northeast sector alone. 2 days. Weiss told him the second team had not come back. Cole said he understood. Weiss asked what he planned to do differently. Cole said the other teams had gone in looking for the sniper. He was going in looking for where the sniper had been. He explained it the way he would have explained it to a hunting client who had never spent time in wild country. A hunter looks for the animal. A tracker looks for the story the animal left behind. 8 days of a man moving through the same forest, approaching the same ridge, lying in the same position, eating and breathing, and shifting his weight. That was not invisible. That was a story written in the ground. And Cole could read it. Weiss looked at him for a moment. Then he told Cole to be back before dark the following evening. What Weiss did not tell Cole, because he did not yet know it himself, was that the sniper had been watching Cole all afternoon as he moved between foxholes talking to witnesses, watching from the northeast, from the elevated depression in the ridge, scope tracking the young private who was asking strange questions and drawing diagrams and not behaving like any other soldier in the company. The sniper had made a note of him. In the root wall of the depression, under a folded piece of oilcloth that nobody had found yet, were 7 rounds of 7.92 by 57 mm ammunition, a partial tin of cold rations, a stub of pencil, and a hand-drawn sketch of the American positions below. On the sketch, made that same afternoon in fresh pencil lines still slightly raised from the paper, one figure in one foxhole had been circled. It was Cole's foxhole. November 11th, 1944. 4:19 in the morning. Cole had not slept. He was lying in a foxhole that was not his own. Weiss had moved him the night before, after Cole showed him the sketch with the circled position, and he stared at the pine branches above him, and thought about what it meant that a man he had never met had been watching him carefully enough to identify which hole in the ground he slept in. It meant the sniper was not just a shooter, he was a reader. He watched, he assessed, he decided. The same skills Cole had spent 6 years developing in the mountains of Montana, this man had developed somewhere else, in some other forest, for some other purpose, and had been applying them here for at least 8 days against people who had no idea what they were dealing with. Cole got up at 4, checked his rifle, and did not eat. He had his 4 men. Weiss had chosen them the previous evening, and Cole had spent 20 minutes with them before dark. Their names were Garrett, Thibodeau, Park, and a private from Minnesota everyone called Swede. Cole had told them one thing: "You do not move unless I move. You do not fire unless I fire. If something goes wrong, you stay down and stay silent. The worst thing you can do in that forest is make noise." Garrett, who was from rural Georgia and had been cutting timber before the war, looked at Cole when he said that, and nodded once in a way that told Cole he was the right man. The others nodded too, but Garrett's nod meant he already understood what silence in a forest actually required. That was enough. They entered the sector at 4:40, while it was still full dark. Cole moved in front. The 4 followed at 10-yard intervals, each man watching the back of the man ahead. 30 yards. Stop. Listen. 30 yards. Stop. Listen. The ground fog was heavier than 2 days before. The trees were shapes, not trees. Every sound was amplified the way sounds are when you cannot see their source. At one point, maybe 40 minutes in, Cole stopped and raised his fist, and the column froze. He had heard something above them and to the left. Not a footstep, not a voice. A sound like a branch settling under weight, a single soft creak that lasted half a second and then stopped. The 5 men stood motionless for 4 minutes. Cole counted them. Nothing moved. Nothing made another sound. Either it had been the forest settling in the cold, or it had been an animal, or it had been something else entirely, and whatever it was had gone still the same moment they did. Cole filed it away and started moving again, but he moved differently after that. Lower, slower, more deliberate about where his feet went. They reached the base of the ridge at 6:15, 1 hour before the light would be right for shooting. Cole positioned his 4 men in a shallow arc at the base, each behind the widest tree available, each with a line toward the depression 60 yards above. He told them in a voice below a whisper that the man they were waiting for would come from the north, from above and to the left, that he would arrive before 10. That when the time came, they were to watch Cole and nothing else. Not the trees, not the sounds, not their own fear. Cole. Then he climbed. He moved up the ridge the way he had come down it 2 days before, following his own tracks, placing each foot where he had placed it before. The root wall of the depression was visible from 20 yards in the grey pre-dawn light. He stopped just below it, pressed against the trunk of one of the large firs, and waited. At 6:58, the sky above the canopy began to pale. At 7:12, Cole checked the depression from his position. The oilcloth was where he had left it, the ground undisturbed. The sniper had not arrived yet, which meant Cole was ahead of him, which was exactly where he needed to be. He pressed his back against the fir and controlled his breathing and watched the approach from the north. At 7:40, he heard something. Not a footstep, not a branch. A change in the quality of the silence above him and to the left. A slight compression, as if the forest had taken a breath and not released it. Cole had felt this before, in the mountains, when an elk was moving through timber toward him and had not yet cleared the last screen of trees. The animal was not visible yet, but the forest knew it was there. He pressed himself flat against the tree and did not move. 60 seconds passed. Then the shadow between 2 trees above him changed shape. Something that had not been there was now there. It resolved slowly into the outline of a man moving downhill through the trees, with the careful, deliberate stillness of someone who had made this exact approach many times before. He moved the way water moves around rocks. The man wore a reversible winter smock, white side out, and carried a carabiner 98K with a scope. He was not young. From the economy of his movement, from the way his feet found the ground without hesitation, Cole put him somewhere between 35 and 45, a man in his prime. A man who had been doing this for a long time. Cole watched him close the distance to the depression and felt his own pulse in his hands. Then the man stepped down into the depression without checking his approach first. Cole had been waiting for that, not hoping for it, waiting for it, because he had understood from the pattern of 8 days that this man's one vulnerability was the routine he had built. A position that had never been compromised teaches a man to stop questioning it. 8 days of arriving to find everything exactly as he had left it had answered a question for the sniper that he had apparently stopped asking. The question was whether today might be different. Today was different. Cole moved the instant the man dropped below the rim and was no longer visible. He covered 20 yards uphill in 8 seconds, low and fast, feet on the root surfaces, no loose needles, no sound. He came over the rim of the depression with his rifle at his shoulder. The German was on one knee, his back to Cole, unfolding the oilcloth, the 7 rounds, the ration tin, the sketch. He had not heard anything. He was completely unaware. Cole had 1 second with the man's back in front of him before he fired, and in that second he saw something he had not expected to see. On the side of the canvas bag, the man had set down in the bowl. There was a small photograph tucked under the strap, a woman and 2 children standing in front of a house with white shutters. The photograph was worn at the edges, the way photographs get when they have been handled many times in many different pockets. Cole fired once. The sound cracked through the trees and rolled down the ridge, and the forest went quiet. Below, 4 men pressed against 4 trees and did not move. They waited. 40 seconds later, Cole appeared at the rim and raised one hand. He stood at the edge of the depression for a moment before descending. He did not look at the photograph again. He picked up the sketch of the American positions, the one with the circled foxhole, folded it, and put it in his jacket pocket. He left everything else exactly as it was. Going back down the ridge, he passed Garrett at the base of the first tree. Garrett looked up at him and asked with his eyes whether it was done. Cole nodded. Garrett looked at Cole's face for a moment, then looked away into the trees and said nothing, which was exactly the right thing to do. The 5 of them walked back through the forest in the same formation they had come in, 30 yards, and stop, 30 yards, and stop. The fog was beginning to lift. In 2 hours the sun would be in the southeast, low over the tree line, and the trail crossing 280 yards to the south would be open ground again, just open ground, and a man could walk across it carrying C rations and a radio battery without it being the last thing he ever did. Cole did not feel like a hero. He felt tired and cold and slightly sick in a way he recognized from other mornings after other necessary things. He thought about Danny Kowalski, who had taken 2 extra steps on the way to the ground and whom nobody had been able to reach for an hour. He thought about the 2 men from the 2nd counter-sniper team who had not come back, whose crosses Weiss had not yet drawn on his map. He thought about the photograph tucked under the strap of a canvas bag in a shallow depression on a ridge in a German forest. Then he stopped thinking about it because there was nothing useful to be done with any of it, and he had a report to give and the living to get back to. November 11th, 1944, 9:47 in the morning. Private First Class Gerald Munn was already on the other side when he stopped and turned around. He had crossed 400 yards of open forest in 4 minutes, carrying a crate of rifle ammunition and 2 morphine syrettes that the company medic had been requesting for 3 days. He had crossed in daylight, walking upright, no smoke cover, no suppressing fire. He had done it because Cole had come back that morning and told Weiss it was done, and Weiss had looked at his watch and told Munn to go. Munn stood on the far side and looked back at the open ground behind him and did not move for a moment. He had crossed that same stretch twice at night in the past 4 days, both times in darkness, both times through a minefield with no lights, both times listening for the click that meant he had stepped on something he would not walk away from. He had made it both times. He had not expected to make it either time. Now he had crossed in daylight and nothing had happened, and the forest looked like a forest and not like the thing it had been for 9 days, and he did not know exactly what to do with that. He turned around and kept walking. The second runner crossed at 10:15, the third at 10:40. By noon, 7 men had crossed in both directions and every one of them was alive, and the soldiers watching from the foxholes understood, without being told, that something had changed. Nobody announced it. The trail was simply open, the way a road becomes passable after a storm clears, and the men who had been stopped started moving. Captain Weiss wrote 3 sentences in his field report that evening. Counter-sniper operation conducted November 11th. Enemy sniper position located and neutralized. Resupply corridor restored. 3 sentences. No names, no details. Cole's 2-page report, which described exactly what he had found, and how he had found it and what he had done, was submitted up the chain and came back 3 weeks later with a single notation in the margin from a battalion intelligence officer Cole had never met. Interesting methodology. Recommend incorporating into future counter-sniper doctrine. File with training records. That was all. Cole read it once, folded the papers, and put them in his pack. He was not surprised. The Army was a machine, and machines process inputs according to their design, and the design had not been built to recognize what he had done, because what he had done did not fit into any existing category. He had not held a position, or taken an objective, or engaged the enemy in a firefight with witnesses and a body count that could be entered into a form. He had gone into a forest and read it the way he had been reading forests since he was 16 years old, and a trail was open and men were alive, and the Army did not have a form for that. 2 days after the operation, a different stretch of the line, a quarter-mile to the west, developed a similar problem. Not 1 sniper this time. 2 operating in coordination, 1 to draw fire and 1 to kill the men who returned it. 4 Americans dead in 6 hours. The company's captain was down with a chest wound. A 23-year-old lieutenant was in command and had been in combat for 9 days. Weiss sent Cole. Cole spent the first day reading the ground the same way he had before. 2 men meant 2 approach routes, 2 sets of sign, 2 patterns that had to be understood separately before he could understand how they connected. By the end of the first day, he had both approach routes mapped in his notebook, and he had identified the depression the second shooter was using, which was cleverly placed to cover the first man's withdrawal if the first man drew fire. On the second morning, Cole positioned himself and 3 men, including Garrett, who had been in the first operation, and whose quality Cole already trusted. They were in position before dawn. At 7:20, the first sniper arrived at his position and settled in. Cole waited. He wanted both men visible before he acted, because acting on one and missing the other meant the second man would disappear into the German lines, and the problem would reconstitute itself somewhere else within a day. At 8:05, the second sniper made a lateral movement between positions that Cole had not accounted for. A route shift, maybe a precaution, maybe just a change in habit. The new route brought him within 30 yards of where Garrett was lying in the needle layer at the base of a pine, completely still, face down, with nothing but a thin layer of pine branches across his back. The German sniper walked past him at 30 yards. Cole could see both of them from his position. He could see the sniper's breath in the cold air. He could see Garrett's hands, which were flat on the ground and completely motionless. 30 yards. The sniper did not look down. He was watching the canopy and the middle distance and the approach to his firing position, and he was not looking at the ground close to him, because experienced men in the field rarely look at what is directly beside them. They look outward. Cole knew this. He had been counting on it. He did not fire. If he fired at the second man now, the first man would hear it and move, and Cole needed both of them. He stayed still and watched Garrett stay still and watched the German sniper walk through 30 yards of Garrett's life without knowing it, and reach his position and settle in. Then Cole dealt with both of them in the order that minimized the chance of either one getting clear. Garrett did not speak for the rest of that day. Cole did not ask him to. There was nothing to say about 30 yards that would have improved on the silence. By the end of November, Cole had been sent to 4 separate positions along the regimental line, each one different, each one requiring a different read of a different forest. He had no sniper training, no formal instruction in counter-sniper tactics. He had 6 years of guiding elk hunters through terrain that punished inattention, and that turned out to be exactly what was needed and exactly what the Army had not thought to look for when it assembled its infantry companies. On December the 3rd, a captain named Arthur Briggs from Battalion Intelligence sat down in the mud across from Cole's foxhole and asked him a single question. He asked how Cole had known to look at the wound angles. Cole said he had not known in advance. He had thought about it the same way he thought about finding a carcass in the field. You start with what the animal left behind, not with where you think the animal was. Briggs wrote that down. Then he asked Cole if he would spend 2 days teaching his method to 12 men. Cole said he would do it. Most of the 12 could not absorb what he was showing them, not because they were poor soldiers, but because reading ground is a language, and languages take years. But 3 of them had something. A sergeant from Tennessee who had been deer hunting since he was old enough to hold a rifle, and who understood the relationship between terrain and animal behavior in a way that translated directly. A private from Oregon who had grown up fishing mountain streams and had the kind of attention to small things that most men lose by the time they are adults. Cole worked with those 2 specifically. He took them into the forest behind the line and showed them what he had learned to see. The difference between a heel impression and a toe impression. How to read the angle of a broken stem to determine direction of passage. How to locate a human presence by listening for the absence of birds. The relationship between sun angle and scope glare. What a cache means about a man's confidence in his own position. He showed them the sketch he still carried in his jacket pocket, the hand-drawn map of the American positions with the circled foxhole. He told them what it meant. It meant the man who drew it was thinking about the same things Cole was thinking about, using the same methods, reaching the same conclusions. For a long time. Then he asked what for a long time. Then he asked what happened to the man who drew it. Cole said he dealt with it. The sergeant nodded and handed it back and said nothing else. He understood exactly what that meant, and exactly why Cole had said it without detail, without pride, without apology. Some things in a war are necessary, and some things are terrible, and the honest thing is to say what happened without dressing it in either direction. The 2 men Cole trained handled 6 confirmed sniper problems along the regimental line before the fighting in the Hurtgen ended. Their methods were Cole's methods, adapted for different terrain and different opponents. None of it was recorded in official doctrine. It moved the way useful knowledge always moves in a war, quietly, person to person, between men who needed it and men who had it. Cole came out of the Hurtgen in late November, went through the Bulge, crossed the Rhine in March and was in Germany when the war ended in May 1945. He went home to Deer Lodge, Montana that fall. He took back his job as a hunting guide in the mountains west of the Continental Divide and worked it for 31 more years. He never talked about the Hurtgen. There was nothing to say that would have made sense to anyone who had not been there. And the things that would have made sense, there were things he preferred to leave in the forest. The sketch stayed in a drawer in his house until he died. The trail crossing where Danny Kowalski fell is unmarked. There is nothing there now but trees.